Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Hey, yeah, guess what?
What?
It didn't record.
But it said it was.
So I feel like that was God telling us, here, have another go, kids.
Okay. Welcome to the True Crime ABC's podcast. I'm Dani.
And I'm Sarah. Join us as we take a creepy and crimey journey through the alphabet with you.
Listen through the end of each episode for reading recommendations
and a sneak peek into what is going on in the podcast next week. Why are we here? I know, deep cut there. As much as we'd like to give you the meaning of life, we are not sure. But why we are here for this podcast, the best explanation is that we are really good at being best friends, but really bad at staying in touch with one another. We weren't good at it when we lived in the same town. We weren't good at it when we lived in the same state. Now we're not super good at it living in different states. So this is kind of us. It's a way that we are keeping in touch every week, which is kind of great. Plus, we love murders and stuff.
This episode is supported by the letter A. A is for axes, which is our murder weapon of choice this week.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah, we love them. So fun fact about them, in 2019, the FBI reported 1,476 murders due to knives or cutting objects. Apparently they don't have a special category just for axe murders. So,
It's
maybe
such a shame.
Maybe it's a point of improvement for them next time around.
You're the Federal Bureau. I would like to lobby a complaint with the Federal Bureau of Investigation for not giving me specific statistics. Come on now. The axe emoji was added to the emoji lexicon in 2019, which is pretty cool. Fun. Sweet.
I feel like it should have been earlier than that. It's pretty recent.
Yeah, it's pre-COVID.
Right?
Remember COVID?
Oh, do I?
I say as I literally had COVID like a minute ago. It was like last
my gosh.
Another fun fact, Nick and I, my husband and I, and a couple of our Florida friends went and did axe throwing, like you know what I mean? I am not good at it.
I have not been axe throwing. There is a place, I believe, down in the Detroit area, of course,
I'm
45 to an hour away.
But given your husband's beard game, how have you not been axe throwing? This seems like it is 100% up his alley.
I've never thrown them. I know how to use an axe, but
right. I just feel like y'all need to put on some plaid and go lumberjacking.
I mean, we just need a few axes, I guess. We could probably put up a little course in the backyard and some hay bales. I don't know. I don't know what you throw axes at.
As long as you're not murdering people.
No, not on my list of things to do. Not today, anyway.
Speaking of murders, we've got some real fun murders for you guys today. Let me preface this. This is a true crime and comedy podcast. We know that murdering is bad. We're aware. But
for sure,
growing up watching Unsolved Mysteries and Dateline and 48 Hours and Forensic Files, as a kid who watched primarily those shows,
CSI. Shout out to CSI.
I mean, eventually CSI, but pre-CSI.
Yes.
I was a latchkey kid. Like, I was home. My older brother was watching me after school. You know what I mean? So, there was a lot of television I probably should not have been watching. And as a 9-year-old, I am a chronic warrior, I would describe myself as. And all the true crime docs and stuff that I've watched and all those shows are just prepping me for not being murdered. I feel pretty good about that. Listen, I've got 35 years of proof that it worked. I haven't been murdered yet.
So far, so good. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
So we decided, this is Sarah, that I'm going to tell my story first this week. We had mentioned before, we are from Michigan. I no longer live in Michigan, but Michigan's one of those weird places where when you're from Michigan, you're always from Michigan. Michigan people love Michigan. Even if you hate Michigan, you love Michigan. So given the opportunity, I'm going to do a Michigan story because I love my old home state. Okay, so my story is sometimes referred to as the Michigan Lizzie Borden story. And not because Lizzie Borden was in Michigan, but because my lady is Lizzie Borden-esque in her axe murdering. We are going to travel to beautiful Williamston, Michigan, a small township. I'm pretty sure it's still a township. It might be a village. No, it's a township.
Say maybe a village, but
yeah, one of those things. A small little town southeast of Lansing, Michigan, which is our capital city. I did a little bit extra research because it's just who I am as a human. And according to the 1890 census, Williamston had a population of about like 2,000 people.
so not
Super rural. Yeah, like rural farming area. Even now, I think it's only less than 4,000 people. Just like side note, fun factoid, whatever. It does have a bomb Cuban restaurant downtown. Like, it's so good. I live in Florida. It should not be better than the Cuban food that I get here, and it is better than the Cuban food I get here. So not sponsored, but 2 giant thumbs up to Jose's Cuban Sandwich and Deli in beautiful Williamston, Michigan. All of our sources will be posted in show notes and things, but I got most of my information from a book written by a fellow Michigander, Rob Sadler, who was a police officer in Michigan for a long time. I think he is now retired, but he comes from a family of police officers. And his great-great-grandfather was actually the Ingham County Sheriff when this murder took place. So he wrote this book because he was like, hey, this is my great-great-grandfather. And he got interested in it and like spent like a decade researching, basically. Wow. Yeah, which is pretty sweet. So it was a really good book. It was hard to put down. If you don't love historical reads, like a lot of it is about laws of the time, mental health care at the time, you know, the setting, what it looked like in Williamston at that time. It's probably not going to be a book for you, but I loved it. It had a lot of old time, like pictures from the time. It goes into great detail and like makes you kind of feel like you're there. It was really good. But basically, so the majority of my story is from his research. There isn't much on the internet aside from his book that's available. Like if I went to Michigan and went to libraries in the county and to courthouses and got their documents, there's a lot, but he did the research for me. So I don't have to. Buckle in, kids.
Can't wait.
All right. All right. The crime. Neighbors and onlookers stood outside of 320 Elevator Street, the tiny home where Alfred Haney, his wife Martha, and his mother Mariah all lived together. So the house was basically a shack. It was just like a rectangle with a few windows, a door. There wasn't a porch. It wasn't painted. Most people said the inside was kind of nasty. It was always dirty, smelled a little bit from like dirty dishes. I get it, Martha. Nobody likes doing the dishes. But Alfred, the husband, called Alfie. Oh, okay, Nick just got home. Called Alfie by his friends and his family, was really liked by the people in the town. He was known for being a really, really hard worker. He just wasn't very wealthy and he wasn't particularly bright. Like he was just a really hardworking, nice, simple fella. So at lunchtime on April 23rd, 1897, it could have been dinner time too. I got mixed reports, but at a mealtime on April 23rd, 1897, Alfred came home to find a pretty gruesome scene. So his front door was obliterated, just chunks of the door missing. It was hanging open. There was blood everywhere inside. There were chunks of hair mixed in with pools of blood. And the overwhelming acrid smell of burning filled the house. And then, of course, there was his mother's severed head sitting on a plate in the middle of the dining room table. Knife and fork on each side.
Like it was set.
Yeah.
The table had been set, like it was ready to go.
This is the meal for this evening, sir. So, yeah. So that was what was on the menu that day. The rest of the body.
Head cheese.
Yeah.
sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's what's on the menu. The rest of the body lay on the floor of the house where it had been doused in kerosene and set on fire. The only recognizable part of the burnt corpse were the hands and the feet, and this is the saddest thing ever, the feet which had house slippers melted into them, which makes me so sad. So the body belonged to 85-year-old Mariah Haney. That was Alfred's mother. And he saw his mother's head on the table and was like, began looking for his wife, because for all he knew, somebody came into the house and did this. And he found his wife sitting calmly in the bedroom, whispering to herself. So he was like, yeah, I'm going to go get help. And he runs out of the house and runs straight to the police station. Now, keep in mind, 1897, he was not whipping out his iPhone to call the police.
I was going to say no 911.
There was no 911. I don't even know. I mean, there may have been phones. When did phones happen? Probably not till later, right?
I don't know.
Should I ask Gary?
You figure it's a rural area, so even if there was the technology, they may not have had the means to be able to, have a phone in the house or something like that.
Sorry, I'm looking up. I literally Googled when did phones happen.
Just Alexander Graham Bell. When was he alive?
So, I mean, it was 1800s.
Yeah,
was when they were like invented, but mostly 20th century, not so much 19th century. Anywho, Alfie books it, goes to the police station. Now, their neighbors watched Alfred leave the house. He like ran out screaming, and there was smoke billowing out of the house because there was a body on fire inside. They assumed he was running to the firehouse, not to the police station. They thought the house was just on fire. So this is a small town. They've got, like a pump, like a water pump. So being small town neighborly, they start grabbing buckets of water and throwing it into the windows of the house.
Oh, gosh.
I know, right? So eventually, one of the neighbors, John Robinson, goes into the house with a big bucket of water and sees like this large mound on the ground that he throws water on, assuming he assumed it was just like he had said later in documents. He assumed it was just a pile of clothes because that's what it looked like. And we'll come back to why it looked like just a pile of clothes. He didn't realize that he was extinguishing the body of Mariah Haney until he looked over and saw her head on the table. And then he freaked out, ran out, and let nobody else go inside, basically. But I thought this was kind of funny. At one point, while John, the neighbor, had been inside the house, Martha, sorry, Tucker's barking. Martha comes out of the bedroom where she had been sitting talking to herself, sees him, and is like, is annoyed that he's in her house. And she's in her underwear. Like she's just in a bra and panties because she had taken off her dress that was covered in blood to use as kindling to start the fire of her mother-in-law's body. So what a dream. So anyway, she turned and walked back into the bedroom. John runs out of the house, doesn't allow anybody else in. Eventually, police come to the house, but from what they could see, Martha was gone. She wasn't inside the house anymore. So they start looking for her, and they find her in the backyard of the house, like the backyard, I guess.
Yeah.
And she's digging a hole in the back of the house with her bare hands, just kind of like muttering to herself. And the police asked, like, well, what are you doing? And she said, well, I killed my mother-in-law. So she was arrested and taken to the police station.
Yeah. I mean,
where they put her in a cell. Again, she was just like, she straight up said she killed her mother-in-law. Martha Haney was born in the late 1860s, originally as Martha Pierce. So she grew up in the Lansing area and was one of 7 children. From what I gathered, it didn't seem like she had a happy childhood. It didn't get into any specifics or anything, but it just her life just seemed kind of bleak. So she was known to have epileptic seizures in her youth.
Okay.
And then by 1884, at 16, Martha married a man named John Woodard, who was 21, which, different times. Like,
well, yeah, that was.
Yeah, still gross, but 1621 wasn't that unheard of. And they had 3 kids together. Unfortunately, Woodard, her first husband, abandoned them, her and her children. Couldn't find any more information about him. And so Alfred Haney, her second husband, knew that Martha had had 3 children and never asked where they were. Like,
what?
What? He assumed it was just like a sore spot and didn't bring it up.
What? But where were they? Like,
I'm glad you asked. So apparently Martha had given little like breadcrumbs of information. She had told Alfred that the 2 older children were living with other families in Ohio, but then never mentioned where her youngest child was. And then, so like the rumor mill's going, and rumor said that Martha had traveled north with the 10-month-old baby, George, after her first husband had left her, but had returned without the baby. And so people had assumed, well, she murdered her baby.
Right. That seems on brand.
Yeah. After further research, though, and like, thank goodness, Martha had actually taken the baby to a church in Lansing to a specific guy named Reverend Sly, who was like known for adopting out babies to good homes and was like legitimately a solid dude, devoted his life to finding homes for children, which is lovely. And with the assistance of Martha's older sister, because Martha couldn't really read or write, so her sister went with her to like read the documentation, all that stuff.
Yeah.
The baby was placed with a family basically who could give him a better life. And that is all the information we got. No idea what happened to baby George Woodard. An article in the local paper at that time had stated that Martha had done right by the child, and then the whispers kind of died down.
Okay.
But Martha had plenty of other things that they whispered about. So Alfie and Martha had only been married for like 3 years. And Alfred's mother was not a fan of Martha. In fact, she had encouraged Alfie not to marry Martha, like devoted to the idea of not letting her son marry this woman. Just in the short time they had seen that Martha was kind of prone to fits of rage, where she just rage and freak out, and would spend a lot of time sitting alone talking to herself. Alfred loved her, right? And he married Martha anyway. And there were 3 years of very heavy tension in the house between Martha and her mother-in-law. Now, I don't know. So one of the pictures that's in like our episode notes, when I Googled Martha and Alfred Haney, it's a picture that came up. It looks more like a picture from the 1940s. So I don't think it's them, but if it is them, Alfie marrying her makes sense. Cause she like, in my head, it's like, well, you'll marry a crazy 10. So maybe he picked the crazy 10 over the sane 6, just like, you know what I mean? But again, I don't know if that's actually a picture of them or not.
Yeah.
So maybe Martha Haney was a babe and Alfie just couldn't help himself. That's my reasoning. But anyway, so the investigation. So Martha was arrested for the crime, and police wanted to talk to Alfred. So they found him at the local bar where like his buddies were buying him drinks so he could like drown his sorrows, whatever. And this investigation was being run by the local sheriff, J.J. Rail, who was Ron Sadler, the guy who wrote the book, his great-great-grandfather.
Got it.
When I tell you that every single man in this story had the most beautiful mustache, I cannot stress enough the beauty of these mustaches.
We love a good mustache around here, right?
They're so great. Oh my God, I can't. Love a good mustache. So Alfred was taken to the police station just to tell the sheriff everything that he knew about his wife and about the events of the day. Alfred wasn't able to share much about Martha's past, only that she had many siblings and that her mother had died in Ionia, which is a small town kind of in between Lansing and Grand Rapids. Sheriff Rail found this particularly interesting because Ionia was the location of the Michigan State Asylum for the dangerous and criminally insane. So he figured like maybe her mother had died there But he just thought that was a bit of a coincidence because that's likely where Martha was going to end up. Foreshadowing. So Alfred told the sheriff just that morning that Martha was supposed to meet with the local doctor, Dr. Shumway, also epically mustachioed, to discuss her mental health. But when Alfie woke up that morning, Martha was in like a super good mood. She was smiling. He hadn't seen her smile in a long time, which is sad. She was like, you know, honey, we can't afford for you to miss a day's work. Like, I'm feeling really good today. Why don't, you go to work today, get those wages, and then we'll go tomorrow, which would have been a Saturday. He hesitated, but he's like, well, gosh, she's in a really good mood. Sure, why not? Like, she,
Right.
whatever,
Why would you question it?
Obviously, he probably felt some guilt about that decision later.
Yeah.
Again, Mariah Haney had never liked her daughter-in-law, Martha. They were known to have like screaming matches that had drawn the attention of the neighbors, but also there was a mill by the house that was close to railroad tracks, and the people working at the mill and the neighbors had all witnessed these crazy screaming matches between Martha and Mariah. It was part of the talk of the town. Now, Alfred had specifically told Sheriff Rail that he had witnessed the arguments between his wife and mother, but the women had never actually hit each other. Occasionally they had physically kind of pushed each other or nudged each other or whatever. But like Alfred would intervene if things were getting too hot and like separate the women and give them their space, whatever. In the weeks leading up to the murder, Martha had been particularly angry, really short fused, like talking to herself in closed rooms. And she started having conversations with her dead mother. Like that's who she was talking to. Yeah. So it's not a good look for Martha. Like you can talk to ghosts, sure, but like don't let the ghosts be the only people you're talking to.
Bates Motel style.
Yeah. So that's initially why Alfred had reached out to Dr. Shumway for help. Like kudos Alfie, by the way, in 1897 for recognizing that mental health. So Martha, for some reason, blamed Mariah. Like, even though it was Alfred who was pushing this, Martha was like, I hate my mother-in-law. This is her fault, whatever. And that was like the last straw. So that morning, Alfred went off to work to make that money. And Martha and Mariah had another one of their infamous screaming matches. So while Mariah was getting while Mariah was getting water from the pump outside, Martha had swapped out a picture of Mariah's late husband with a picture of her children, the 3 that she no longer has. Mariah came inside, saw that her husband's picture was gone and like freaked out and was like, well, where's my husband's picture? And Martha wouldn't tell her. Mariah got so mad, she like swung at Martha and she missed. And then Martha pushed the older woman down to the ground, like smiling sweetly and creepily saying like, how beautiful are my children? Aren't they so beautiful?
What?
Which is like freaking crazy. Yeah.
Cuckoo. Something had snapped at that point.
Yeah,
for sure.
There's something wrong. Something is wrong. Mariah was mad. Obviously, she was like super angry. She wanted her husband's picture. She was screaming at Martha. Martha eventually walks out of the house in a huff, muttering to herself. So Mariah's freaked out, locks the door behind Martha and like won't let her in. So Martha realizes she's locked out, starts pounding on the door, demanding to be let in. Now, again, the mill workers and the neighbors are hearing her rage or whatever. And they're screaming and they're like, oh, that Martha and Mariah, those old so-and-sos.
Just them again.
Yeah, doing that silly thing they do.
Gosh.
So apparently nobody noticed when Martha found the axe outside of her home. And she goes to the front door and starts pounding on the door, demanding to be let in. When she wasn't let in, she takes the axe and starts taking chunks out of the door with the axe, which is why when Alfie came home, the door was obliterated. Martha gets through the door. And Mariah sees that she's got the axe, obviously tries to get away, but like Mariah's 85. Even though she was strong and fit, because like if you're 85 back then, you were essentially a superhero. How are you making it that long? And she had been a farmer's wife, so she was like a strong lady. So she tries to get away, and Martha swings the axe and keeps swinging the axe until Mariah stops making sounds. Martha then chopped off Mariah's head, placed it on the dining table, removed her dress, and doused the dress and the body with kerosene from their lamps in the house. Martha threw a match on her mother-in-law and walked calmly to the bedroom to inform her mother's ghost that she had done it.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
So Martha tells the police that her ghost mom told her that she had to kill Mariah before Mariah killed her. Which is wild.
Well, did anybody interview the ghost mom?
I know, right? Like, come on. They believed in that shit. Where are the dowsing rods? People, come on. So the craziest thing about this whole story, like this next bit is like the thing that I was like, what? So there was a coroner's inquest, which if you don't know what a coroner's inquest is, back then it was like how they determined, was a crime committed? Is this a murder? And to do so, they had the coroner come, a justice of the peace come, and 6 random people they picked up in the town.
It's a small town. They probably knew each other.
They're like, hey guys, come on over to the Haney house. So they hold this inquest at the house. Literally, the murder stuff is everywhere. There's a head on the table. There's a body burning on the floor. There's
nobody put the fire out. That's really my question.
Okay.
Has the fire been put out?
Yes, the fire's out. Sorry. There is a previously burnt body on the floor. and they basically had to determine, was this a murder? So they walked inside and they were like, yep, murder.
I was like, is that a question? Because I feel like that's a pretty easy answer.
So basically a bunch of evidence was presented to these people, including John Robinson, the guy who came in and saw and like put the fire out, whatever. He came in, he was probably traumatized for life, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But I mean, between the evidence presented at the coroner's inquest and the fact that Martha confessed to the crime, obviously she was guilty of it. So while Martha was in jail, she would often talk to herself or her ghost mom and sing, "Oh, I can't go to heaven, to hell I must go. Murderers don't go to heaven, and that's where I'm bound to go." So Ron Sadler's book was called "To Hell I Must Go." And that's where he got the title from, which is creepy. Martha would have like fits in the jail again, and they kept calling them fits. I don't know if that meant like physical flailing or if she's just like screaming. It was not specific. But it was so violent and like scary that Sheriff Rail decided to take extra good care of her and like watch over her. No, I don't think it was like quotey fingers. Like he would literally set a chair outside of her cell and like sit there with her to make sure that she didn't hurt herself.
Okay.
Which is like precious. Yeah. Like I really think it was like a good hearted thing.
Okay.
And it could be just bias from Ron Sadler because this is his great grandfather, but he doesn't really seem like the type to not share the facts. So needless to say, Martha was deemed insane and not competent to stand trial.
That's probably a good assessment. I think that was probably a job well done by the court.
Yeah, I think they got that one right. So she was spent to spend the rest of her days in the Michigan Asylum for the Dangerous and Criminally Insane in beautiful Ionia, Michigan, where my dear college roommate Mo is from. What's up, Mo? Oh, Mo.
Fun fact about Mo.
Yeah.
She caught the bouquet at my wedding.
Oh,
like a champ. Like a champ.
Yep. Good job, Mo. Oh, I need to text her. Less than 2 years after Martha had been sent to the Michigan Asylum for the Dangerous and Criminally Insane, she died of my favorite old-timey thing, consumption.
Oh, yes. It's so
Which
good.
is basic tuberculosis. I mean, she had tuberculosis. She probably had it long before she went in. Mm-hmm. She died like something like 17 months later.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, her grave was never marked. It wasn't documented anywhere. So we have no idea where she was laid to rest. Mm. And back then, let's be honest, at asylums, they were just chucking bodies in mass graves.
I was going to say, she's probably on the grounds.
Yeah.
At whatever site. I'm sure it's not there anymore.
Yeah. The Michigan Asylum for the Dangerous and Criminally Insane became like the Ionia State Hospital or something. And it was in working order for a long time. There was a lot more information in Sadler's book about the court case and mental illness in the 1800s, which was really interesting, but I was afraid like this was getting a little long because we're coming up probably around 30 minutes-ish. So that's Martha Haney. Pretty crazy.
Pretty good.
Yeah. Also, okay, so one last fun fact. So the Haney house actually was standing, 320 Elevator Street in Williamston, Michigan, was standing until 1990.
Oh.
And eventually the Williamston Fire Department, it could have been the Ingham County Fire, whatever, one of the fire departments in that area, burned it down as like a controlled training exercise. And you can't see it anymore, but I did Google. I thought about driving by it when I was home a few weeks ago. And I was like, nah, I don't want to be the creep because it's like the end of a street. And I was like, clearly this is what I'm hearing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's that. That's Martha Haney.
All right. So the tale that I have today to bring is, again, another axe murder on theme.
I love a good axe murder.
So the Villisca Axe Murders took place in Iowa. I don't know if you're familiar with the Des Moines, Iowa area, but I am definitely not. But this was in this was in Montgomery County. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever actually been to Iowa either. Anyway, so this is about 10 miles southwest of Des Moines. This case is actually still unsolved, so that is kind of fun.
Was it ever on Unsolved Mysteries?
You know,
I feel like it should have.
It should have been, but I don't know if it ever was. I feel like I watched a lot of Unsolved Mysteries, and I don't know if I ever saw this episode. If it was. So this one is definitely there's an entire family involved. So this one, we have Josiah, who is the dad, well-known church worker in town. He, was definitely one of the people who was out and about in the community, so he was definitely well-known.
A pillar of the community, one might say.
Yeah, you could say that. You could say that. So the night that this all happened, the family had over 2 guests as well. So two guests of the family. They were actually the daughters of a farmer that was living in the area as well. So
was it just like friends of the family, or?
Yeah, they had went over there to stay and hang out. They had been visiting church earlier that night with the entire Moore family. So we don't just have the 2 girls. We've got Josiah, we've got Sarah, his wife, and then we've got 4 of their children. So essentially their entire family, which is crazy. There were kids ranging from, I think, 8 to 11. Yeah. We've got Herman, who was 11, Catherine, who was 10, Boyd, who was 7, Paul, who was 5. And then you've got
babies.
I know. And then you've got Lena and Ina, who are the daughters of TJ Stillinger, who is the other farmer, and they were 12 and 8, respectively. So yeah, this, I don't know if I've ever read a case like this or looked into a case like this, but this is crazy because this is going to sound crazy. I don't know how you do this to an entire family while everyone is asleep and then everyone is still sleeping. Like
with an axe.
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows? There's a lot of mystery surrounding what happened that night. No one really knows. There wasn't a lot of witnesses. Of course, typical fashion, neighbors heard nothing. No one heard anything. So this took place overnight, June 9th, 1912. So
another oldie.
I was gonna say a little old, just past the turn of the century. So of course, 8 people involved, 6 of them are children. Basically the morning of the 10th, there was a clerk that had called Josiah to the house, but they couldn't get a hold of anybody.
Mhm.
And apparently the neighbors didn't see them doing their usual routine. So good job on the neighbors for like noticing, because they
Being
were the ones who,
observational.
yeah.
Well, it was like, sorry, this is one of my favorite murders. I'm so
Yeah,
excited.
no, please, yes.
It was like an old lady next door, wasn't it?
Yes. Yes. So there's actually, once you get into like the laundry list of witnesses that they called, she was one of, so Mary Peckham is who you are probably referring to. The
What
first
up, Mary?
witness and the next door neighbor. She was apparently the first one to notice anything was amiss at the house. So of course, relatives were called in. They attempted to open doors and windows, but they couldn't really get in. So they called the town marshal. Of course, they broke in the door. And they went throughout the house and found victims basically in every single bedroom of the house, which is crazy. So Henry Horton was the marshal. He was quoted that day after the discovery saying there was somebody murdered in every bed, which, again, if you think about
babies, I can't.
An entire family.
Yeah. And then some.
Yeah.
Wild.
So this is a little bit of the weird stuff that was found at the scene. So other than obviously the victims, the very bloody scene from all over the house, there was a 4-pound slab of bacon leaning against the wall next to where the axe was found in the backyard. So there's like no rhyme or reason. Nobody ever really found out what was going on with that or where that came from. I don't know.
Okay, so I heard a conspiracy. Again, this is one of my favorites.
Let's go.
I heard a conspiracy theory that the slab of bacon was basically like the 1912 version of a fleshlight.
What? Okay.
Conspiracy theory. That is one of the theories that I had heard. One of the podcasts I listened to. Gross.
Yeah, that's definitely yeah.
Was it their bacon?
I don't know. I feel like maybe like if somebody was trying to get into the house, maybe they were delivering that or using it as like a prop to get in. I don't know. But if everybody was asleep, I don't think that I don't know.
Wild,
the bacon just throws me. Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe you just really like bacon.
I mean, that could have been the case. So apparently they believe after all of the murders took place, the suspect went through and searched for pieces of clothing to cover all of the mirrors and the glass in the house.
Oh, creepy.
I know. So I feel like, I don't know. Is there like a religious aspect to that? Why would somebody do that?
That seems really psychological too. Like,
yeah,
I can't look at myself in the mirror after.
Yeah, definitely.
Or maybe like old timey, like weren't like ghosts and stuff in the mirrors. Like after someone died, you had to like cover the mirrors so their souls didn't get trapped somewhere. Some BS.
Yeah.
That seems like some witchy stuff.
It's definitely a strange behavior, I guess. So there was also, and this is again a very weird thing because was somebody making a plate, again, not as exciting as the plate in your story, but there was a plate of food. There was a plate of food on the table and a bowl of bloody water. So like, what is that? I don't know.
Gross.
And I don't know if anybody was actually killed in the kitchen. So how did that get there? I don't know. It's very strange. Very strange. But essentially nothing else was really disturbed at the scene. So they sent in bloodhounds to try to search for the killer or killers, because at this point they had no idea if it was one or more people. And they chased leads all over. I think it was like 10 years that they tried to, basically try people or get people investigated for this crime. So they ended up actually trying to convict the reverend.
Oh.
So the night before the crime, I think I touched on this before, but the night before the crime, the entire family, including the girls, the Stillinger girls, were at the Presbyterian church. They were helping with a program that was going on. Sarah Moore had been helping with the program, so the whole family was there attending.
Right.
So it's just very, it would be very appropriate for him to be a suspect, right? Like if they were hanging out there, I don't know, he could have drugged them. He could have, who knows what was going on. Obviously if they were all going back to the house, he could have gone back there with them, and then, who knows?
Right.
But he was tried. He left the town on a train the morning of the murders and allegedly told other passengers about 8 dead souls in
Villisca.
Yeah, thank you. In Villisca, who were butchered in their beds. But at that point, the family hadn't been discovered yet. So a little strange, a little bit strange. So Reverend Kelly actually signed a confession months later saying that God had whispered to him to suffer the children to come unto me.
What the heck?
So
how about you go suffer yourself elsewhere, bud?
Yeah, very, very strange. And so, they obviously thought that they had caught the guy, but in September at the trial, the jury deadlocked 11-1 for acquittal. And then he was tried again in November of that year, and he was acquitted at that time as well. And no one else was ever tried.
But like he said, he did it, kind of.
Yeah.
Like he signed a confession. How'd they acquit that shit?
Because Well, yeah. I was going to say he withdrew it. Yeah, he withdrew it right before the trial began. That's what it was.
I hate that. Like, homie, you already said you did it. No takesies, backsies, okay?
Yeah. So he was the only one ever tried. However, again, if you go to the book recommendation this week, there were other, they basically thought that there was a serial killer that was tied to, hold on a second, sorry.
My dog just snored audibly. So, thanks, Tucker. Tucker gets a place in the podcast.
It's good. I love it. Okay. So yeah, they thought that there was a serial killer actually by the name of Henry Moore, no relation to the actual Moore family. I know, very strange. But he was tied to possibly 22 others, other murders that had happened around the Midwest in the same time. Damn. So, but again, never tried, never actually, anything came to fruition for that.
Right. Oh, it's so sad.
I know, it's very, very sad. Again, a whole family wiped out, a ton of loss, and still unsolved.
And so many question marks. Like how he had to have killed the parents first, right?
Yeah. So they think that that's what happened. Is he went to the parents first and then went to each of the children. I believe that the Stillinger girls were last, and they thought that maybe one of them possibly woke up. But again, everything happened so quickly. Yeah, everything happened so quickly that they, but again, this is kind of an interesting site as well, because the house is still standing.
Yeah.
It was restored. I can't remember what year it was. Let me see.
Someday when we are
Well, listen,
touring with this podcast, we're gonna do Zach Bagans style episode.
Oh my God,
of
listen, girl.
Ghost Adventures in the Villisca house.
Fuck that noise. I'll be there just holding the camera.
Yep.
Uh,
We have to get a oh God, what's his name? Zach Bagans' little buddy who always screams.
Aaron.
Yeah, Aaron. He's always yelling.
Nice.
Okay, sorry. Sidetracked.
No, you're okay.
Alas, I digress, as always.
You're good. Yeah, so the house was renovated, I believe it was 2013, back to sort of its original glory.
Oh, I love a historical renovation. Oh my gosh, those are like,
yeah.
I fall into deep YouTube holes of like people restoring homes to like back to their old charm.
Well, you know how I feel about an old house, so
yeah.
I love a good old house.
Meanwhile, I live in a 1960s rectangle, so.
Well, you know, that's all right. We'll take what we can get, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the house is still standing. They offer tours. They offer overnight experiences if you're that kind of person and you want to possibly have some paranormal experiences. But some of the stuff that, you know, of course, how could the house not be haunted, right? Like, that's the question. How could it not be haunted?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Even if you don't believe in ghosts, how do you not believe this house is haunted? Like, I can't.
So, yeah, of course, they've had paranormal investigators come through and all of that. And of course, as you would expect, they hear children's voices, EVPs, all of that stuff. Yeah. Falling or flying objects. So if you want to have an overnight and see for yourself what the house looks like and hang out in bedrooms, see if you can find any more clues on the grounds for us.
Yeah, let's solve this shit 112 years later. What was it? 1911? 1912. 111 years later.
Yep.
Wild.
Yeah.
It's so crazy to me that, like, I mean, yes, it's 1912. They don't have like fingerprinting. I mean, no, they don't have fingerprinting. They don't have. Was that Nick?
Yeah.
I was gonna say walk by.
He like poked over. I was like, oh.
I mean, I guess as like a police officer back then, how does one even attempt to solve a crime unless somebody says I did it?
You have to. That's the scary thing. You have to trust people's word.
Yeah.
And basically, like, are you a liar or are you not a liar?
Right. Oh, wild.
You know, it would be interesting to see if they, you know, like, would they be able to go back and pull DNA on any of this stuff?
Did they?
I think that they did, actually.
Was the axe at the scene of the crime? Like, was it left there? Okay.
Yeah, they found it in the backyard next to the bacon. Which again, like, no effort whatsoever to hide or get rid of the murder weapon.
Listen, 20th century or 1900s, early 1900s criminals be wildin'. Like, they just don't care. Like, DNA doesn't even exist yet.
Yeah.
Watson and Crick got nothing on these criminals.
I was gonna say, could you imagine they knew about 23andMe?
I think I remember one of the things I read, it was their axe, right? It was like the Moore family's axe.
Yes.
You might have said that. Like, who goes into a house planning to murder people and you don't bring your own weapon?
Right. It's very strange. That's why I feel
going up to a potluck without a pot.
It seems like very much like a weird crime of opportunity. Like, I don't know. And then there was
like someone who knew them well enough to know that there would be things around to kill them with.
Yeah.
I guess it's a farm, so like I'm sure there's plenty of shit around.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm sure that they have. It wasn't out of place to have an
Right.
axe.
Oh my gosh, my house is freezing. I need to turn off the AC. What did I do before the Nest app on my phone? I had to like get up and walk to the thermostat.
Yay, technology!
Thank you, technology, for encouraging my absolute laziness.
I mean, that's
Just
what it's all about, right?
sloth-like
Making life
activities.
easy. So one of the people that was at the top of the list for suspects as well was this guy named Frank Jones. He actually employed Josiah at the Jones store for a few years. So according to the town, Jones was really upset that Moore had left the company.
Mhm.
And I think that when Josiah left, he actually took the John Deere franchise brand with him from the
Oh,
store.
damn.
So
Yeah.
like motive, what?
Yeah. Like
Uh
big money.
and you know, to take out an entire family, you'd have to be pretty mad.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
So, or, I guess really crazy, but
Yeah. Tomato, tomato.
so he again was at the top of the list, but never tried, never convicted, said he never did it, of course.
Right.
You know.
Ugh. It stinks. Like my brain just goes to like poor Lena and Ina. Like they were just going over for a sleepover after church.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Like what a terrible thing. When I first started looking at this, I was like, well, maybe the Stillingers were trying to get rid of their daughters and made it, just ended up taking out an entire other family as well. But I don't think that's it. That's not it.
No thanks. I'm gonna fall down a rabbit hole of looking for Villisca Murder House ghost tours. I foresee that in my immediate future of like just watching video after video.
Well, funny you say that. At villiscaiowa.com, it's the website for the actual house itself. So you can click, you can find the tours and overnights there. They have an evidence page as well that links you to different paranormal investigator videos.
Oh,
so
sweet.
If you're interested in that.
Well, I know what I'm doing before bed tonight. I'm setting myself up for a full slew of nightmares.
Not sleeping.
Well, yay.
So, yeah.
So not yay for the Moore family, but.
No, and, it doesn't really look like anybody is probably ever going to solve this one. I don't know. Other than DNA, I don't know how you would really get to the bottom of this because, again, there's nothing. There's a whole lot of nothing. So.
Yeah. Yikes. Well, hey, first episode that we did it. Because this podcast is all about education, we've got some book recommendations for you guys. If you would like to know more about Martha Haney and her axe murdering ways, you can read To Hell I Must Go by Rod Sadler, who I mentioned quite a few times in my story notes.
And I have a recommendation for, obviously there's been a lot of coverage on the Villisca Axe Murders, but this particular book goes into a little bit more about trying to connect the axe murders in the area that also happened around the same time. So it's a father-daughter duo that wrote a book about all of the research that's been done and digging into the axe murders, because there's a theory that this was a serial killer. So not just a one-off.
And what is that book?
Oh, and that book is called The Man from the Train by Bill James and Rachel McCarthy James.
Next week's episode will be supported by the letter B. Check us out on social media and give us your best guesses on what our theme for next week will be.
If you'd like to hear more from us, please check us out on Instagram, TikTok, and Patreon at True Crime ABC Podcast, or email us your thoughts ideas, and listener stories to truecrimeabcpodcast@gmail.com.
Special thank yous, obviously, to our family, our super great husbands, and our friends who have listened to us talk about this for way too much of their lives. And thank you to Rob Huns for our super creepy theme song. You can check him out at robhunsmusic.com or on his Instagram at robhunsmusic. That's ROBHUN as in Nancy, HUNNS music. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you so much.